Well, that audio's gonna peak.
What?
Oh my god. No, it's just, that was a classic Universal Monsters moment.
It was.
Speaking of Universal Monsters.
You guys want to see another one?
Yeah.
What was that Frankenstein Wolfman one with the... It's the... Why am I grabbing your boob?
I don't know.
It's a beautiful picture.
Absolutely. That's the thumbnail right there.
I mean, I wouldn't say that until you see it.
Fair enough.
What if you're out of frame? What if I'm out of frame?
It's possible.
Because it feels closer today.
It's about the same place it's always been.
In our hearts.
And in our minds. Good night, everybody. Good.
Hey, it's Halloween week. It's time for Halloween.
Wow.
Whoa.
Oh my god. Well, how are we going to celebrate Halloween this year?
Well, we're both wearing lots of orange.
We certainly are.
And black. I put on my orange shoes.
I have... What do I have on? Oh, I have Sonic. That's not very Halloween-y. But I have...
I'm sure there's a Sonic Halloween special.
But I have my trick-or-treat cup.
I have my Haunted Mansion cup.
So we thought it would be a grand old time to talk about some cozy classic horror films.
Yes, much tied into the last week's video about Horrified. We are gonna do kind of just a little breakdown of the Universal Monster movies.
Absolutely, just like the Universal Monsters broke us down last week.
Hey, we won against two.
Two of them, yes. The Mummy got away.
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
The Mummy got away and got 3 more sequels? How many?
Yeah,
how
and
many of
I
those...
was killed off in the first one.
Yes, absolutely. How many... Yeah, those movies... People talk about sequels nowadays, but, like... Universal really was the first one to, just milk a franchise.
Is it milking if it's making money?
Well, it's true. Well, yeah, that's exactly what it is. But...
They didn't milk it dry.
No, absolutely.
Arguably.
Well, they're still around to this day, like
Who?
the Universal Monsters.
Where?
Oh my god! Oh my god! But yeah, no,
When?
because even they're still restoring them every couple of years. You
They just released
those 4Ks of a bunch of them.
I don't know why this is 4Ks, but
I just picked up the Wolfman and Dracula myself. Just 4K.
4Ks.
This is how much resolution is one 4K.
It's this much.
This much. This is 1 pixel. That's
kind of like $5. $5 footlongs.
4K Blu-ray.
4K Blu. Can we get sued by Subway for that?
I don't know.
Yeah,
we're gonna find out.
They hired a pedophile. I don't care.
Woof.
Come at me, Subway.
Yeah, fair enough. That's always gonna be on your brand. Unfortunately, I ordered Subway the other day. Actually, it was quite good.
Wow. But I bet you didn't.
Anyway, so because what would you say you gonna make it?
Yeah, eventually. What's your question, man? What's your question? I'll answer. I don't need to see to talk about Universal Monster movies.
No, absolutely.
When I originally saw them, they were fuzzy and black and white on VHS.
Well, yeah, I guess that's the thing. When were you first introduced to Dracula, Frankenstein, all those guys?
I mean, we know the main answer to this. We all should know, unless you're a new person. Then you wouldn't know
at this point.
The first thing was the Eyewitness Monsters thing they showed me in school.
Yes,
which I've talked about to death.
Absolutely.
But then the next thing would have been Abbott and Costello.
Yeah, you saw those spin-offs before you saw the actual movies themselves.
Yeah. And then of course, in kids' cartoons and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was always aware of the characters. I knew who they were.
Yeah, of course. Again, it's every year inevitably you will see Frankenstein decorations and Draculas and mummies all around. So you are
some daddies too.
Some daddies, some uncles, some aunts.
In them.
Yep. I never see the Invisible Man. Don't see a lot.
I see him quite a bit.
You don't see him. Anyway. But But no, that's cool. Honestly, my first exposure to those movies specifically was when Van Helsing was coming out.
Really?
Yeah, like I had never really seen them before that. I always knew about them, like the song, the Monster Mash, all that stuff.
Well, no, you knew about the characters from the books, but
Yeah, like the zeitgeist version of like those characters, but like I didn't really become super interested in those classic monsters until
2004.
yes. But then they started releasing them in these cool box sets on DVD, and I remember Mom getting like yeah, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, all those ones, and we watched them on DVD for the first time, and like that was kind of that would have I would have been 12 at the time, if I recall, and yeah, like just it was really cool because I hadn't seen like a lot of like older movies at that point, and that kind of got me interested in like stuff that came out prior to 1984.
It's 1984, man.
1984, man. It's the Terminator all over again. But no, and they've always kind of been a part of my horror fandom since then, to one extent or another.
Since 2004.
Since 2004. Since I was 12 years old.
I was like 5.
Oh, I know.
I was a child. I was a baby. I shouldn't have been watching that stuff.
Probably not. I shouldn't have been watching. I shouldn't have been watching Jaws, but I was.
And yet here we are.
Absolutely, we turned out great. So, nerd.
Fine. Screw you.
I'm just kidding.
Nope, I'm not going to see for this whole podcast.
Having clear vision is not nerdy at all. It's actually very important.
I'm protesting you.
You're protesting?
Yes.
Well, this could be a very boring podcast if only one of us is talking.
Especially if it's you.
Yes, right?
That's right. I can't see, but I can sass.
Apparently. It's like it's one of your most important qualities.
It's the only quality.
Yep, it's the only reason people keep you around. So you can
So I can sass them?
Yes. You keep things interesting.
I feel like it's the opposite.
Hmm?
I feel like that's the opposite reason.
What? They don't want to. They don't keep you around because they don't want you to sass them.
They don't keep me around because I do sass them.
Right.
I sass them away.
Yes.
I assassinate them.
I was getting.
I beat you to it. So anywho.
Yes. Anyway.
Universal Monsters. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm blanking. My mind is gone because I can't see.
That's not true. That's not how brains work.
Could be.
That's true. But of course, it all kind of started with the original Phantom of the Opera, played by Lon Chaney. We're not going to go that far back. Also,
no, if you want to go that far back, then we need to talk about Nosferatu and all this other stuff.
Nosferatu wasn't, although Nosferatu was like one of the first instances in film of like somebody making a blatant ripoff to
a fan fiction.
Yeah. Well, not like no, because it is the story, but then who was it? Was it Bram Stoker's estate? Was like, hey, you can't just make a Dracula movie, please and thank you.
Ah, but it's not Dracula.
No, it was like in there are some prints where it like specifically says like Dracula and like Lucy and things like that, but after the lawsuit, they had to change it. That's when it was like Count Orlok, and like they changed a bunch of the names and stuff. But there are versions that say Dracula on it. You're gonna look it up, aren't you? You're gonna see if I'm bullshitting you.
I think you might be.
No, I swear to God, like audience, you know me. I would never lie about something so serious.
Mm-hmm. Count Dracula was renamed Count Orlok, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The original German intertitles acknowledge Dracula as the source.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing that specifically it was always Count Orlok.
Really?
Yep.
I could have sworn that like titles in the original movie, like when they first released it, said Dracula.
No, they referenced that it was based off Dracula in the original German.
Yeah, but I'm talking in the actual like the title cards calling him Dracula. I'm certain that
You know how hard that would be to change that in 1922?
you just make a new card and you film it.
Yeah, that was expensive.
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong, but you know what's more expensive? Getting sued.
Yeah, no, nothing.
That's so weird. Is this one of those Mandela effect things?
No, I think it's just a you thing.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
But speaking of Dracula, that's the first movie.
Yeah, the classic Spanish Dracula film that everybody knows and loves.
Yes, the Spanish film Dracula,
Yes,
also known as Spanish Dracula.
Spanish Dracula.
Spacula.
Spacula. Which again, like, I find it hilarious that back in the day, like the cheaper option, because like the cheaper option instead of like subtitling a movie for different regions or things like that was to just literally make the movie with different actors in a different language.
Well, I don't think subtitles were a thing back in 1931.
Right.
There were title cards, but I don't think there was actually subtitles along the bottom of your screen.
No, and that's a fair point actually. So like literally they wanted to like show the movie in another region. You had to like literally just make the movie again. But I think it's weird because Dracula I think is the only one of those that has a version in another language.
Yes, because it did not warrant a return on the investment.
Nope. But that's just, it's the funniest thing, because, like, and there's a lot of people who actually say that, like, the Spanish version is shot better than the American version.
Overall, it is considered that the cinematography is better.
Yeah.
There's a lot more crane shots, there's a lot more creativity.
They were creatively creative. It's creatively creative.
It is magically delicious.
Absolutely.
There was a lot more. Well, no, I think like because you can have creativity as a baseline, and then you can have like
creativity.
Yes, I'm gonna own this, and I'm gonna stick with it. Creativity is now a thing.
Copyright Ethan Hill 2020.
Hell yeah, I own creative.
Creativity.
I'll let you all know if I'm Irish when I get my test results back. So creatively speaking, there was a lot more flourish on the tech side.
A little more variety in the cinematography. However,
the acting side was not the same. You didn't have Bela Lugosi.
Yeah. And
you had a lot more interesting choices on the actors' parts. Yes. But again, I think that could even come down to, again, a cultural thing and how they convey emotion in Spanish TV versus how they would in American.
Right. It's a little more, I'd say it would be a bit more theatrical at the time.
Yeah, and like old acting was theatrical acting for everybody. Because
absolutely. That's what most actors came from, was theater, and then
subtlety was not a thing.
Yeah, well, and especially like if you're talking like transitioning from theater to silent film, you would have to have those like bigger open movements and like the large facial expressions to convey what the emotion of the scene is, because you didn't have dialogue to necessarily portray it. So no, that makes a lot of sense in that regard. But no, like, obviously, when people think of Dracula, you think, like, Bela Lugosi is that creature for a lot of people. Like, there have been many great Draculas over the years, whether you're talking about Christopher Lee or Gary Oldman.
Luke Evans. For vampire attacks.
Yep, Luke Evans. Of course, the greatest Dracula of all time was played by, Dominic Purcell in Blade 3.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I forgot about that.
Yep, Egyptian Dracula.
The Egyptian
Dracula, who turns into the Predator. It's very odd. Blade 3 is a very odd movie.
Leslie Nielsen.
Leslie Nielsen, of course, very iconic Dracula.
Yep.
Frank Langella, of course.
Yep.
So yes, there's been a lot of
that guy from Van Helsing and Moulin Rouge.
Yes,
I don't know the actor's name.
I do not remember. Richard. Oh crap! Yeah, I can't remember. I'm sorry, guy who played Dracula in Van Helsing. I do not remember your name at this time.
He
Oh, he was going for it. Oh,
there was no holding back.
100%. He was chewing the scenery, spitting it out, and chewing it again.
When Van Helsing murders all his babies, and he yells and
there's so many it's just,
and everyone's like and it's all like
Yup. Well, that's like
I just summed up every Universal monster movie.
A lot of people screaming.
He's like and they're like and they're like
Yep.
Like
there's a lot of monsters, that they'll go to strangle you before anything else. Like even the Wolfman,
and the creature.
They'll go to strangle you before they'll use their claws or their teeth. Very odd at the time. Very odd behavior for a monster. Like with Frankenstein, I get it.
Look, strangulations were the #1 cause of death in 1931.
You actually have a statistic on that?
No, but I can pretend to get one.
You're gonna...
Strangulations are the #1 cause of death from 1941 to 19...
You just need to tweet that and it'll become true.
56. And the answer is... yes.
Well, there you have it, folks. Ethan.
That's totally real research, guys. On screen, on camera.
That's why people were so scared of those movies. They didn't want to be strangled coming out of the theater. But no, you get those iconic performances as well, not just from Bela Lugosi, but the guy who played Redfield.
Dwight Fry.
Who's just again, you want to talk about an over-the-top performance, but he just looks insane throughout most of that movie.
And who did he play?
Renfield.
I swear I heard Redfield, and I'm like,
Chris he plays Redfield? Chris Redfield. Don't you remember that iconic scene where...
Master, I'll punch a boulder for you!
That iconic scene where Redfield punches a boulder. It's a very weird movie.
Very weird, but iconic.
Yep. And then, of course, you get the performance of Van Helsing in the movie as well. And the thing I remember from that movie more than anything else is just a lot of the dialogue exchanges. Because again, that's a lot of what they had to portray the drama. Because they weren't showing a lot, they couldn't really show a lot of the violence. So a lot of it is in the dialogue. It's in a shot of just Bela Lugosi standing there, being creepy as hell. And it's still a very effective movie, I think, to this day. Obviously, it doesn't have a whole lot of flash to it, but I think as far as the iconography goes, it is still a very effective movie.
No, I think I watch it almost every year. All these movies to me are effective, but I guess there's also more nostalgia thing for me.
Yeah.
If you wanted to scare someone with it, show it to a child. Show it to someone anywhere between the age of 5 to 10. That's probably your window of someone not thinking they're super cheesy.
Yeah. No, for sure. Why do you think because some vampire movies do this, most of them don't, but Dracula has a lot of powers that are not really in other vampire movies, or they'll pick and choose certain things.
Like what?
Turning into a bat is only really ever in Dracula media. You don't really see a whole lot of that in other stuff.
No, it happens to vampires quite a bit.
Like what?
Looney Tunes?
Well, of course.
Not wrong.
You're not wrong. But it's you get transforming into a wolf, turning into mist, turning into stuff.
Yeah, because he could transform. He's a shapeshifter.
Yes.
But
a lot of
a lot of modern interpretations, and I think I know where you're going with this. A lot of reasons why that is because the demystifying and sexification of vampires.
What? Are you trying to say Bela Lugosi wasn't sexy as Dracula?
No, like, I think there's a certain appeal.
With his Transylvanian Hungarian accent?
Yeah, there's a certain appeal still there. But specifically speaking, if you look at, again, modern interpretations of Dracula and of vampires, again, it's a lot of trying to either be, well, how can this scientifically be explained? Yeah. How are vampires in our real world? And you can't just be like, oh, well, magic and supernatural stuff.
Yeah.
It has to be explained from a scientific standpoint. So you're demystifying it. And the easiest thing to, like, get rid of out of that is transformation.
Yeah. Which is fair. Like, and then there's some movies where, like, they double down on that stuff. Like Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. Or, sorry, Bram Stoker's Dracula.
We know what you mean.
Yeah, where he just transforms into, like, well, he transforms into, like, a big, like, almost werewolf-looking monster at one point. And then he also transforms into a giant bat as well.
No, exactly.
So, and then, of course, Van Helsing, like, you've got, like, the big, like, demon beast. Which, like, part of that comes from the whole, like, origin of, like, him, like, being transformed into a vampire by the devil himself.
Yes.
So, like, I guess you could take it from that angle, but...
But that's still a Dracula-centric thing, right?
Yeah, it doesn't really catch on with a lot of different vampire media.
But a lot of vampires outside of Dracula are treated in more of a... Again, it's the sexification. They're making it sexy and exciting.
Right.
And transformation doesn't exactly, like, lean into that.
Yeah. Fright Night and Lost Boys play around with it a little bit. Because in Lost Boys, they kind of have their, like, vampiric, like, monster face.
Well, Lost Boys is 100%, again, another version of the sexification of vampires.
Yeah. Which, did that really kind of start in, like, the 1970s, 1980s? That sort of era?
I'd say the 1960s.
Well,
there was a lot of sexy movies in the 60s.
It was after Christopher Lee started playing Dracula.
But if you look at the Hammer horror films, and you look at, again, a lot of those kind of horror films, that's when TNA started making more of an appearance in horror films.
Right.
It was after the 50s. Fright Night, the reason why I love Fright Night so much is specifically because they don't play around with it. They bluntly have him transform into a bat.
Yes.
They bluntly have Eddie turn into...
like a wolf monster when he's like dying and stuff.
No, he turns into a wolf and attacks like he.
Oh yeah, no, he does turn into a wolf. I was thinking like the halfway point when he's turning back into Eddie.
Yes, but like so that one to me completely latches on to the mystification, and then still has that newer sex appeal, and that's why I think that one works so well.
Yeah, like Friday's just a great friggin' movie in general, but like
to me, Dracula's like the blueprint for all of them.
Absolutely. Like, that's where it all began to one degree or another. Like, there's definitely, like, vampire myths in other, like, there's a lot of different, like, vampiric myths in, like, different cultures throughout time.
But they didn't want to, when Universal was making this, they were going off things that were already popular. And currently, the two biggest things out there for horror were Dracula and Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And that's where they started with this. That's where they began.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they came out the same year. Like they were the first two.
Yep. Much like the MCU did Iron Man and the Hulk.
Those were two different studios.
What? Ethan, are you telling me?
The Hulk at that point was more closely related to Universal Monsters than it was to Iron Man.
Yeah, which again is appropriate considering that the Hulk very much was modeled after Universal Monsters.
Yes.